Guys, if you haven't noticed, I enjoy playing the Warriors games on this channel. Sure, it's just mindless action, but it's mindless action that I can totally get behind. And plus, it's the skeletal foundation of our favorite spin-off games of all times, like One Piece Pirate Warrior and The Legend of Arslan. In an interview with PlayStation Universe, Akihiro Suzuki confirmed that Dynasty Warriors 9 was well on its way. He also added that they are going to completely revamp the entire system, and that I am looking forward to, because Dynasty Warriors hasn't really evolved much over the years. It's added some stuff, there's new things introduced, but never really take things to the very next level like they do with the spin-off games. So it's good to hear that they're going to mix things up for the next installment. And with the new Dynasty Warriors installment, heralds the next generation of Musou games that come thereafter. So with the small, itsy-bitsy fleeting chance that Suzuki might actually be watching this, which is not likely. Here are my top 10 warriors that they should add to the next installment of Dynasty Warriors, for characters that were both underrepresented in the previous installment, or people that are just a good idea to add. So without further ado, Liao Hua is a former member of the Yellow Turbans who later joined Shu, and he is historically famous for not being as historically famous as the other members of Shu. Although a powerful and very noteworthy soldier, his feats never exceeded the expectations of his fellow comrades. So that's an interesting characteristic to have, but he can be a lot like Han Dong, except a bit more humble, considering that he's working for Shu. And of course, when Wu and Shu start working together, there can be an interesting character dynamic that both Han Dong and Liao Hua can share. However, Han Dong's personality is about a bit more underappreciation, rather than not being as impressive as your fellow combatants. You can also have some scenes where Liao Hua is constantly being outshined by Zhao Yun and the like. However, he doesn't get bitter or jealous, he just makes the face of, well, I better do better next time. Hey, do you want to actually give a face to the Han Dynasty that isn't generic default man over here? Well then look no further than Empress He. Both He and her brother were both driving forces in the Han Dynasty Council. And when Deng Zhuo started to come into power, she offered refuge to her supporters' family, albeit futilely. And eventually Deng Zhuo found her and her brother and executed them both. Given her position and what other characters in the series think of the Han Dynasty, her character would have to revolve around the bourgeoisie, or just haughty royalty. Because remember, she represents the people that incited the Yellow Turban Rebellion, and it would be nice to have someone other than Yuan Shao to speak for the Han. Wen Hu was introduced in Dynasty Warriors 8 as a part of Wen Yang's story. When Wen Yang ultimately joins Jin, his younger brother Wen Hu is ultimately conflicted between the loyalty to his brother or his father. In some instances, he chooses his father, but in many instances, he sides with his beloved brother. We've seen this type of character dynamic done with the Sanada brothers from Samurai Warriors 4. And you can give him an interesting relationship with the Suma brothers. You know, because they're also brothers. Did you know that Cao Cao's daughter Cao Jie is married to the Han Emperor? And that would be an interesting idea to introduce her as the new face of the Han Dynasty. You know, after she's part of the Wei forces. I mean, I'm pitching her as a Wei character, you know, be a part of a few Wei campaigns to solidify her character, but in future campaigns that are against the Han Dynasty, she can be the new face of the Han. And having Cao Jie, who has become a familiar face in the Wei forces, become the leader of the Han Dynasty would make an interesting encounter for the Jin forces when Sima Yi rebels. Rather than a generic default model man say he's angry. Seriously, who the fuck are you and why should I care? He Yan is one of Cao Cao's adopted sons and Empress He's grandnephew. Historically, Cao Pi, Cao Cao's biological son, never really liked him, always referring to him as the false son. So he used this information to have some sort of known rivalry between Cao Pi and He Yan. However, historically, no one really liked him that much. Because although he was a very talented individual, no one could get past his flamboyancy and egotism. Gee, I wonder if we know another character in this series who's egotistical and flamboyant. However, with Zheng He, the attempt is to earn people's respect. So with He Yan, why not have the opposite outcome happen? Have people respect his talents, but not really his personality. Much like Yuan Shao, except happy to work under Cao Cao. This is actually a tie between two Wu warriors, because unlike Wei and Shu, Wu does not have a complete team of legendary officers. Wei has at least 2 or 3, and Shu has a team for Liu Bei and for Zhuge Liang. However, no leaders of Wu have their own entourage. Well then, let's complete Sun Jian's Magnificent Five. I mean, we already have Sun Jian himself, and Wang Bai, and Han Dong. So let's complete that team with Zhu Mao and Qing Pu. Zhu Mao is being most noted for helping out in the defeat of Dong Zhuo during his campaign, and even after they were defeated, Zhu Mao took up his lord's helmet and diverted the enemy away as he was the decoy, so he would give his life for his lord. And Qin Pu was noted to be a very exceptional warrior and diplomat. Noted by who, you ask? Zhou Yu, an intelligent warrior and diplomat. Nonetheless, a person that Zhou Yu respects and a person that would give his life for Sun Jian? I think we deserve to have more than just one muscular old man strutting around the battlefield talking about the whippersnappers. How about we finally complete a legendary team in the Wu forces? And these guys are the proper pickings. Jinzhong Yang, one of the most intelligent and respectable advisors in both Wei and Jin. She is one of the few people, along with Yuan Ji, who foresaw Zhong Wei's betrayal. So there's some interesting campaigns set up right there. I mean, there's a lot of characters that kinda didn't see Zhong Wei's betrayal until way too late. So you can make some interesting missions out of this, where she already knew that he was going to betray them, so she set up some countermeasures, some traps, maybe a few reinforcement officers. You can probably have some scenes where she maybe confronts Zhong Wei, and even advises him that his rebellion isn't really going to work. And like Guo Huai and Zhou Ba, you can introduce them way earlier in Wei campaigns. Hell, introduce her father and younger brother the same way you introduced Wen Yang, and we all know how that turned out. Mao Su was a servant of Shu and a close friend of Zhuge Liang, however Liu Bei is not a big fan of his. So you can make that a part of his character dynamic, make something about him that Liu Bei himself does not trust. I mean, Liu Bei doesn't have a lot of people that he doesn't like. And that's almost to a flaw, he has to hate something. I mean, he trusts Fa Zhang, who openly admits that he is a deviant trickster. However, the most noteworthy thing about Mao Su is his defeat at Jieting at the hands of Zheng He, which earned him an execution, which caused Zhuge Liang to cry tears of grief. The exact same scenario in Dynasty Warriors 8. You can probably bring that up again in a new installment, except this time give Mao Su more of a personality behind generic man. And of course with his defeat at the hands of Zheng He, you can have a rivalry between the two, the same way there's a rivalry between Hong Zhong and Zhao Yuan. I don't know, play around with that, see what works. Gong Bai is the granddaughter of Dong Zhuo, and the only thing we know about her historically is that she had a ridiculously huge coming-of-age ceremony. But there's actually plenty of directions you can go with that. You can make her like a Karen or Lily character, caring not for the worries of the peasants. All she wants is for the people to gaze upon the glory that is her. And you can top that attitude off with a noble woman's laugh. She would have to show up pretty late in the historical campaign, and considering their background, you can give her an interesting relationship between her and Ling Qi, considering that her father and her grandfather used to be relatives. Of course, she would have to show up in only what-if scenarios, because this is not exactly historically accurate enough. You can either be part of the historical route and pretty much be a friend or rival to Ling Qi, or you can make an interesting what-if scenario where Bai and Ling Qi both start a campaign to take back the Three Kingdoms. It's an interesting dynamic that I would sure like to see. Gong Ji has been in Dynasty Warriors games before, but he truly makes his mark in Dynasty Warriors 8. He is a celestial wizard who's solely responsible for cursing Sun Ce, and if you can't defeat him, Sun Ce dies. Historically, he was just a Taoist who Sun Ce swiftly executed because his temple was getting too much popularity. Yeah, what a hero. Not only would it be a good idea to add Gong Ji as a playable character, but it would complete the trifecta of each of the three kingdoms having their own celestial wizard to deal with. You have Gong Ji fighting Wu, Zuo Se fighting Wei, and Zheng Jiao fighting Shu. And of course, you would have an interesting what-if scenario if all three of these celestial wizards work together. There's also a very prominent theme of smoke and fog with Gong Ji. So his weapon could be a smoking pipe. Don't do drugs, kids. And why would you not make this guy a playable character? I mean, he's a driving force in Dynasty Warriors 8, appearing as a main antagonist of 3 separate campaigns in Wu.
Now die, dogs of chaos.
But of course, there's plenty of other historical figures that deserve to be in this series. So, what are your thoughts? Who do you think should be added into the 8th generation? Leave your thoughts down below in the comments section, and remember to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already to be up to date on all the videos I do on this channel. So, starting today, I'm gonna take Warriors analysis in a different direction. I'm gonna try and get all this stuff out as soon as I can, and I'm sorry I didn't upload as frequently this week, but I'll be back on schedule next week. Until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Check out my other stuff on this channel.